we have a long meeting.
Oh.
I don't think we will, but who knows?
No, and I wouldn't give it to anyone.
No, I know. Yeah. It's not worth the dollar that it costs.
No, no, not at all.
Hey, how's it going? Good.
And then you get distracted because there's like not commercial and stuff like that. So I was looking for this list of articles and the librarian was like, I think this needs digitized out. Oh. So what do you know about this? I think it was in the 90s. In the late 90s. One of these.
Thank you. Otherwise, that's right.
How are you? Thank you. I know you come through and you and your wife. Yes. Thank you. Yes, yes. Hello.
Do you want to chat about your email later? About the last one, about the budget and stuff, for the fundraiser, for the sign up, pitch, or do you want to?
Not a fundraiser.
Okay. Well, I was unsure exactly what your thoughts are on it.
It's mostly that
So what happened?
we have to have entities
Yeah,
but not, we don't have to,
so,
we just need like.
in case you're wondering.
Is that the update to the ordinance?
Yes, the old ordinance. It was on CIT. We are on
Okay.
digital.
Sure.
It was just,
I said, I just.
grammar change. And actually, I think it was 1931.
Yeah, because in the packet, there was nothing.
Nothing, because our organization has to be actually.
So what do we do? We'll write tonight to change it?
Yeah,
But
just
now
clean up
they're nervous,
Heidi had caused it.
and I was like, I
So
think
the change is permanent.
Yeah, the changes
yeah, just not
are
really.
correct. From my. If there was a different 501c3 situation.
It didn't.
Correct. For a merger or, so, we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Or, like a new.
Now.
Because they know what this is 24 hours.
The summer's flying by.
It's your.
I'm sure they're insignificant.
Well,
They want community involvement. That's fine.
but, you know,
Two ways to
I mean, it's not a huge thing for you.
no reason to hold that.
not.
I don't think so.
But
I don't know, I guess they feel like they're not very connected.
So if we do it,
Or
like
that
we're
its,
doing here,
its identity has been co-opted in a way.
Yeah, I looked at. We're not wrong. CIT.
So they're like,
Yeah, just assume that. Yeah, we had all the.
Because everybody will know it.
trail.
It could be in
That
one
goes
camp
across
or
the
the
bridge,
other.
and then you can see all the, you can see the ordinance. Yeah. Yeah, like, that seems fine.
Well,
Like,
there's like a full public transportation
right.
sign.
If I just only trusted myself,
Exactly.
I would be in a world of trouble.
So then, it was suggested on the other side of the street, to Lynn, and I was like, oh, yeah. And they were like, well, maybe they would contribute, and I was like, I don't think so.
Sometimes I find I do bad.
And then the second part was, I need to figure out how to create a digital.
But I always feel like I have to be, prepared.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, that's what I was thinking. That,
Oh.
because you can see
Still,
like,
it wasn't
where you enter.
Yes, yeah.
Well, this is Douglas County land, and then this is private land. But if you back up just a hair, I'm sorry. This is an Osage as well. And all of this is open. And you can see.
Well, I went up and down here, Richmond.
Trying to find how you.
Yeah.
But then there was some conflict over whether it's
But like here, overlooked. So all the words. Because it's higher. So I don't know.
I didn't even read it because, like,
Maybe it was
Ladine's has less public pressure, and that's what he's gonna get.
well, I mean, I got the whole lot especially. There's a marker sign here, and why not put another? See if the tribe would be willing to put a marker sign on this side.
I actually asked about that, and I think that's.
Yeah, I know, I always,
Or if that is our little
This,
corner. Yeah, I asked.
but this property is all their
we know
tribes.
Yes.
Maybe they would let us put
Well,
a
the
sign
sign,
on it.
isn't that?
Because we have a sign.
I think this is. Oh yeah.
It's right here.
It could go like this.
Just face the other direction. Like, that wouldn't be a bad idea. If the docks would be great in the background, there's parking here, there's parking access and stuff.
I mean, where there already is one.
Right, yeah, right next to
Kind
it.
of meets the criteria.
But just
Well,
like put it facing the other way.
yeah. I mean, not all of them meet the criteria, I guess. That's how we ended up doing it. But, and that one has to get fixed yet too.
What's the other one?
The other one's the VR. Because I was the one that was on the dead end.
But I thought we made one of that one replacement and do verbiage or.
Well, the location didn't meet the access, and all the neighbors were beeping about it.
Right.
But I don't know the language.
I don't know. And then there's the stockade one. Is that one? Is that one just awesome too? Yeah.
Yeah, check it.
I mean, it's not horrible. Definitely could be better because we're in the southeast.
Well, I think I have to find a spot for this one, and then find.
But this one should just go right here. We'll just put it on the other side of that little walkway, facing the other direction, so you can literally see the ordinance behind it. I think that'd be great. 'Cause
Getting so set on.
no,
Because it has like all that like maritime like wayfinding.
but you can't see. You know? I don't know.
I'm like, oh, so it's So I was like, oh, I'll ask about it's like sponsoring us or the fiscal agent, I guess maybe.
Yeah.
But not money.
Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30 p.m., so I will call the Tuesday, July 16th meeting of the Superior Common Council to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Ledeen. Counselor Van Sickle. Counselor Moffett. Counselor Sweeney. Counselor Fennessy. Counselor Elm. Vice President Ludwig. Counselor Herrick. Counselor Johnson. President Grasky.
We have a quorum.
Item 4.1 is the approval of the July 2nd, 2024 regular council meeting minutes.
Motions by Counselor Herrick, second by Counselor Elm. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 6.1 is report from Mayor Payne.
Okay, good evening again, councilors. A lot of changes here tonight, so I want to get through quite a bit, and I have a long bit of business here in front of me, more than usual. First, I wanted to point out the Climate Justice Survey related to the Climate Justice Grant that you authorized us to apply for a few weeks ago. The survey is part of the public outreach element of the grant that is live now. The easiest way to find it is to go to the city website and the mayor's page. It's right there on the sidebar at the bottom. If you'd like the link, let me know and we'll post the link. It's just kind of one of those long, clunky links. If you'd like it emailed out, you can send it, or I can read it out to you if you like. It just, I screwed up once typing it out, so I recommend just go to the website. Second, I met with President Grasky earlier today, and we've agreed it's probably best to cancel committee of the whole tonight after the council meeting. There's a minor mistake on the agenda. I think we're still compliant, but I don't have the attorney here tonight to ask him. And quite frankly, I was feeling a little stressed presenting on the budget tonight because I, responsibly or not, extended the deadline to submit proposals pretty much until today, which left us a little bit stressed to put that packet together, to deliver it to you in any reasonable amount of time. So I sent out the packet as we have it today, and what I think I'll do is now you'll all have it. You can review it for 2 weeks. We'll discuss it in 2 weeks, but I'll give you one last crack at it. I think it's in our best interest to have as many proposals as we possibly can, and so I will give you till the end of the week this week. Close of business on Friday, 4:30 p.m. on Friday, and then we're going to close the books on that. So you get a chance to see what staff and counselors have been proposing. If you want to throw anything else out there, you can even see how the scoring system is likely to work. I think you'll come with better questions, and now we can get the best of both worlds. So apologies for that, but probably in our best interest. There's also the other thing we're punting on is Councilor Grasky and I discussed and are proposing a change in the ordinance for how we structure our agendas. That is very minor. I've been planning that for years, and that could wait for years as far as I'm concerned, but 2 weeks is plenty, and we were just going to be starting discussion on that anyways. But read that. Please come with opinions, because we've had some very long conversations on how to do that well. So if you have questions in advance, please feel free to reach out. That is all for my report until I go into nonprofit grants. Are there any questions on tonight? Okay, if not, the process review for the nonprofit grants. There should be a memo in your packet. The nonprofit grant, our third and final round for ARPA funding, is open right now until the end of the month, at which point we will stop, unless you direct us otherwise, we're going to stop receiving applications, close the business July 31st, assuming that's a business day. I didn't check. And basically all you'll see in that memo, we're open to changes, but how we are going to score them and recommend them in our sort of internal committee is to use the key indicators from both of the previous grant rounds. So you see key indicators 1, that list was from round 1 of the grants. Key indicators 2 was from round 2, and those are different. We would accept grant applications that fit into either, with the caveat that if you scroll a little further down, we are going to be looking specifically for those applications that are new and novel, namely organizations that have not received a grant before. I told you the wrong number last week. It is not $30,000 we have available. It's $300,000. We had a zero wrong there. We are still very likely to get applications much larger than the amount that we have, or more requests than the amount that we have. Now, in terms of process, we are going to make a recommendation. These are going to be far looser recommendations than we've made in the past because, again, there's going to be kind of a lot of decision-making to be done here. I met with Councillor Sweeney today, and he asked me to have these considered at a special finance committee, and assuming nobody here objects, I think that's wise. So I'll send the recommendations to the finance committee to impose any other conditions they want, to make some final recommendations to the council. But again, you know, as I mentioned before, even when those get to the council, you're going to have some real deliberation to do, and our recommendations, even the committee's recommendations, are only that. And if you have different values, you want to move them around, that's going to be a burden on you to do that. I trust you to be able to do that. I think you're going to be able to do that well, and it'll be a little bit of an involved meeting, but we'll get through it. I think we'll have some fun issuing this money. And by the way, I say the final ARPA round because I've had at least one proposal to keep this fund going annually, and just do, so it's in our interest to develop some good process here. But right now, just trying to get rid of that ARPA money. Questions on that? If not, I'll proceed to the appointments. Oh, I'm sorry. The the Public Art Commission. Go ahead.
6.3, Mayor Payne is recommending renaming the Culture, Event, and Public Art Commission the Public Art Commission.
Motion by Councilor Grasky, second by Councilor Ledeen. I'll turn the mic over to Councilor Grasky in just a minute, folks, but her and I met to discuss this, and my end of this was getting us taking the events part out of committee. Those of you that have been around a long time, this has been my largely failed experiment. It hasn't failed. They've given out a lot of great event grants, but the long history of this was I inherited a small budget to issue small grants to be flexible when an organization or community event needed a little extra funds, needed to waive some permit fees. It was a way for us to do that legally. But to me, that just felt like it was a recipe for bias. I would award, there's a risk. I would try to be impartial, but there's a risk that I would award grants to organizations I liked, and if I didn't like an organization, maybe they don't get a grant. So I wanted to make sure it was impartial, protected, but awarding the grants by committee, we've tried a bunch of different forms, and it just has not worked out super well for events specifically. So the idea is to take that out. Most communities that deal in public art have a dedicated public art commission, and so we'll let them do just that work. If you approve isolating that work to just a public art commission, we'll probably bring back some more changes in how that's structured at future meetings. And in terms of where the event money is going to go, I was asked that question, probably two places. Any events that are performances, so think live music, will still be handled by the Public Art Commission. That is still public art. Rock and roll is art. And any events that are public recreation, think a good fun day like dragon boats, that will move to the Parks and Rec grants. And the money, importantly, the money will go with it. Any money that's still allocated for events will be dispersed to those two committees to handle extra events. Councilor Grasky, anything to add?
I just wanted to point out, too, that I think, you know, when this all started, that we were starting to develop a lot more of community involvement. And when it came to the public art side of it, dealing with that large budget at this moment, it is not a rolling fund. So I wanted to specifically put forward people when we do the biannual grant process that, you know, our first round we received 7 to 8 grants. And so that money needs to be really talked about, delegated, and really put forward as through a certain amount of people, but I think the work was becoming a lot as two committees and as one commission, so I appreciate the conversation over the divide and really putting forth, you know, zeroing in on these funds and allocating them appropriately. So I appreciate the support tonight.
Questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of renaming SEPA as the Public Art Commission, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 6.4 is committee appointments, and to the Tourism Development Commission, appoint Natalie Chin for a 1-year term expiring July 2025.
Motions by Councilor Grasky, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
To the Superior Business Improvement District, reappoint Gary Banker for a 3-year term expiring July 2027.
Counselor, is there objection to me asking the clerk to read all five of these? Go ahead.
Also, to reappoint Chris Shardy for a 3-year term expiring July 2027. 3, to appoint Jordan DeCaro for a 3-year term expiring July 2027. 4, to appoint Micah Paul for a 3-year term expiring July 2027. And 5, to appoint Elizabeth Fritchie for a 3-year term expiring July 2027.
Motion is by Counselor Grasky, second by Counselor Johnson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of appointing all 5 members to the bid, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. And with that, counselors, that concludes my goal to complete all of my appointments by the end of April 2024. So congratulations to me, and thank you.
Item 7.2 is the business of the Public Works Committee with a meeting held on July 9th. Is there a report from the chair?
Thank you, Clerk. Just briefly, the public meetings for the Hammond Avenue Reconstruct project are being scheduled, and if there are suggestions around times and things like that, I think that'd be helpful for us to hear and consider. Also, the Public Works Committee spent a lot of time talking about speeding. This is an issue in as long as I've served on Public Works in every district, whether you are very close to the highway or if you live near a Head Start. So just really trying to retool how we are approaching stop sign installation and enforcement and tracking that time through Smart Force, and just really trying to facilitate as deep a conversation as we can in committee around the work that Public Works and public safety can do together. So trying to be creative and just rethink some of the systems that we have in place. So any ideas or problem areas that you're having, please let us know so we can just take a bigger look at it. I don't think this is a problem that we can solve necessarily, but it is something that we really want to just get a better handle on. The vast majority of complaints we get are from parents and grandparents just worried about their kids. So we're trying to work on that. And just want to thank Councilor Ludwig and the Parks crew for bringing up No Mow May again, when I think that it would have been really easy to just let it go and try to get it out of the news, but it takes intelligent conversations across years sometimes to get a program right. So just want to thank them for having that conversation and the changes that they discussed regarding how we work to be a better city for pollinators. And then finally, I'll just say that the full 5 miles of East 2nd will be sealed for the cracks to protect some of that new pavement. So that probably won't happen until after Labor Day, when the traffic is down just a little bit. If there are any questions, happy to take those.
Counselor, will you take a question from Counselor Herrick?
Yes, of course.
Hi. Just a question on the sealant, for the cracks and that. Okay, I understand we're in charge of maintenance, but will there be any funding toward that, since it's kind of a deeper type maintenance rather than your snow plowing and so on?
Yeah, I think this is coming just from the general street maintenance, and I don't know the difference between the amount allocated here and the amount that we get annually, I want to say they're maybe $100,000 apart. But I also know that we're using a newer technology, that this contractor is using a newer technology around anti-tracking. Am I close on that, Director Janigo?
Yeah, we're going to be using or they're going to be using it's an like you said, an anti-tracking agent. So rather than using the one-ply toilet paper or the sand, they're going to be applying that. So I think there's a little more cost to it, but I think the benefit of not having the sweeping and the calls from that or the toilet paper floating around, I think is going to be well worth it. And on the funding side of things, the DOT pays the City of Superior annually for maintenance. It's called Connecting Highway Aids. So they sign the roads and they allow us, basically, they build them, we maintain them, they pay us Connecting Highway Aids on them. They don't cover the cost of the maintenance, but it's also a city street in their mind. So that's how they work it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, and the motion, we must have business here. Yes, okay. Okay. If there are not any other questions, I will make a motion to approve items 1, 2, and 3.
We'll consider the ordinance separately.
Oh,
We'll have to
thank
read
you.
that. But
1 and 2, please.
the motion is to approve recommendations 1 and 2 of the Public Works Committee by Councilor Van Sickles. Or second?
Second.
Second is by Councilor Ludwig. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 7.2.3 is to approve an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 112, Traffic Code, Article 3, Parking, Schedule J, Accessible Parking Zone, to add Do Not Block Sidewalk sign at 2102 Maryland Avenue.
Motion is by Councilor Herrick, second by Councilor Moffitt. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 7.4 is the business of the Licensing and Fees Committee with the meeting held on July 8th. Is there a report from the chair?
Yeah, there's really only 2 items before you here today. The first item, 7.4.1, is basically just creating efficiencies between the building inspection department and the fire department. Right now, for hotels, motels, and rooming homes or houses. So right now, the fire department inspects those annually, and then it's all that inspection is also duplicated by our building inspection department. And so this recommended change only applies to the building inspection side, where the fire department will still inspect annually. It'll just move the building inspections to once every 36 months instead of once every 12. And we had a long conversation about it, but the building inspection department still feels that it would allow, because it still allows a city official to inspect on an annual basis, to ensure the safe facilities, that that it could work out together. And if during that inspection the fire department notices something that should be alerted to building inspection, they've got that opportunity to as well. So really, that's all that's doing, is changing our ordinance to relax that a little bit for the building inspection department, keeping it the same for the annual inspections for the fire department. Item 7.4.2 is amending the cigarette and tobacco retailer license. And really what this change is doing is aligning our ordinance with the approval and review process for the new and also renewing cigarette, tobacco, and electronic vape device licenses. And really what it does, it just gives the council additional options when considering either a new license or a renewal of a license, and just kind of tightens that up so that hopefully nothing kind of slips through the cracks.
Unless there are questions for the chair, we'll read the ordinances.
All right, the first item is to approve an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 74, Licenses, Permits, and Business Regulations, Article 2, Hotels, Motels, and Rooming Houses, Section 74-28, License required for hotel, motel, or rooming houses, to change the frequency of building inspection requirements for licensing to once every 3 years.
Motion is by Councilor Herrick, second by Councilor Grasky. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
7.4.2 is to approve an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 62, Health and Sanitation, Article 1 in general, Section 62-5, cigarettes and tobacco product retailer license.
Motion's by Councilor Fennessy, second by Councilor Herrick. Is there discussion? Hearing, Councilor Johnson made the second. The minutes will reflect. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. Councilor, I just want to say I'm grateful to the License and Fees Committee. That is 2 out of the 3, if you're keeping score, of our plan to review and regulate vaping in the city. The third and final, I'm not sure exactly when we'll get to it, but probably pretty soon, be Public Safety Committee considering T21. It's probably the most complex and the most interesting. But Councilor Johnson.
I think for public safety, and Councilor Ledeen and I have to connect on this one again, but we're looking at maybe September so we can get some of the students back in to help speak about that. So I think we'll probably see that sometime in September.
Sounds great.
Item 8.1.1 is the business of the Communications and Information Technology Committee with the meeting held on July 8th. Is there a report from the chair?
Yeah, I got a quick one here. So the July 8th CIT Committee's primary focus was meeting on the discussion and approval of the Connect Superior fiber construction agreements for Phase 1 specifically. And our broadband manager, Stephanie, provided an update on those bidding processes. There was actually a great turnout. There was 8 bids who applied, many from local contractors. Hanco was the chosen lowest bidder. We actually was under budget for that, so that was a significant benefit for the city here. The committee discussed the details of Phase 1, which involved installing conduits, fiber lines, the cabinets, and so on. This phase is going to prepare for the future connections to homes by setting up easy connection points. All the work in Phase 1 will be underground. Supply chain issues were addressed, and Stephanie confirmed that there were no major delays expected. That being said, the timeline is tight. The materials are expected to be ordered shortly after council approval, if this is approved tonight. Real testing locates in August and construction starting in September, aiming for the completion of the primary construction by the end of November. The committee also talked about informing residents about the construction timelines to minimize disruption and communicate what will be happening along the process by sending letters to the affected addresses. Entrust, which is formerly Magellan, will handle the project management, engineering support, and construction management and inspection to ensure that everything is going to run smoothly. You'll also notice that there is an ordinance change here that's on our desks for just some grammar changes. We also discussed the city's new website. Our director, Dan Shea from the IT department, had talked about the new features that it will improve user experience, easier navigation, better search functionality, mobile optimization. And the website is prominently going to display the committee agendas, council videos, visitor information, a Facebook feed, and a way for citizens to report concerns similar to the city app. These updates are going to make it easier for residents to find information and access information online. So in a summary, the meeting approved the fiber Phase 1 construction agreements, discussed project details, logistics, outlined the next steps for communication oversight, and reviewed upcoming features for the website redesign to enhance the user experience. So as you can see, we have these 3 items, my recommendations to approve this, and I'll have the clerk read them off, unless there's questions.
Sir, questions for the chair will begin with reading of the ordinance.
Item 1 is an approval of an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 114, Utilities, Article 9, Superior Broadband Utility.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is by Councilor Elm, second by Councilor Ludwig. Discussion. Councilor Fennessy.
In the council packet, there aren't any changes. It's actually just the old ordinance. There aren't any updates at all. I realize we got this, in front of us a couple minutes before the council meeting started, but they're in looking over they're super insignificant, updates, but just procedurally where we're asking to update an ordinance that wasn't updated in the agenda. What exactly would we be updating?
Well, the motion would be to adopt what is in front of you, and so we don't have any notice issues because it's noticed, and so the actual motion, as long as you are confined to this chapter of the ordinance, you can change it however you want, and that satisfies your notice requirements. In terms, is that the question you asked, or was more involved?
That does, for the most part, answer my questions. I mean, if there was anything of like significance in here, I would rather send it back to committee before we put our final approval on here. But it's almost just grammar that's changing. It's like changing the word with to the word within. It's got a couple capitalized things that that weren't there before. It's really nothing of significance. Just if there was anything of significance that was actually changing the overall spirit of the ordinance, I would rather send it back to committee. But it's a super insignificant change. My question was more procedurally where the old unupdated ordinance was in the packet.
Related to these changes, or the nature of changes in ordinance, council, I think councilors, I believe we're going to find many more typos throughout our city code, and I don't know that anybody's reviewed them in that way, and so I don't know if this was the clerk or broadband manager Becken, but whoever did it, kudos, and we are likely to do this with many or more chapters, and so, to Councilor Fennessy's point, I don't want to alarm anybody when this kind of stuff comes up. We will be these regular grammar changes. Let me see how this is noticed, because we should confine ourselves to things that do not change the broad intent of the ordinance, unless we're going to do a full review of every single code at these meetings. Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you could amend this any way you wanted. That'd be within the spirit of the law. But yeah, just grammar changes, and I think we're going to do it again with other ordinances. Other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the amendments to the ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 2 is to approve Phase 1 fiber construction project agreement with Hanco Utilities Incorporated in the amount of $1,472,064.76.
Motion is by Councilor Elm, second by Councilor Moffitt. Is there discussion? Councilor Fennessy.
Just to clarify, so all this 1.42 is doing is running the main line and creating those access points to each individual house, correct?
I have to rely on Councilor Elm. Councilor Elm, is that correct to you?
Yes, that's what we specifically discussed it, unless broadband manager Becken would like to add to that.
That is correct.
Yes.
She said it is correct.
All right. And do we know what the cost is to go, once we get this done? Let's say there's 8 homes that say I want to sign up. Do we know how much it's going to be for each one of those 8 homes?
Yep. Ms. Becken, please.
All right, can you clarify that? Do you mean if we need to extend further, or to just do the actual drop lines from?
Yeah, the actual drop line. So let's say I'm in this zone. I live in that zone. It's the connection point is out at the boulevard, and if I wanted to come into my house to take advantage of this new service, that's not on me as the homeowner? That's part of this whole project, correct?
At this point, that is my understanding. When I look at the big picture, when I look at the business plan, that was included in city costs, not sent on to the consumer outright.
Okay. And do we know how much that's going to be that the city would be taking on? How much of that?
So we are exploring that right now to find the final on it. They were in our in like the performa, we have estimates on what it could cost, but a lot of those we're finding are skewing a little bit high because they were done when fiber prices were really high, when supply chains were a little bit wiggly on that. So when you look at here, let me check. So the estimate right now is about $700 per drop. That is what is in the capital budget and performa.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Further discussion. Question is on awarding the contract for Phase 1 construction of Connect Superior to Hanco Utilities. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 3 is to waive the bidding requirements and approve the professional services agreement for Connect Superior Fiber Engineering Phase 1 construction phase to Entrust Engineering LLC in an amount not to exceed $402,590.
Motion is by Councilor Elm, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 8.2, reports without any recommendations. At this time, are there any further committee or commission reports to be made?
Hearing none, we can move to new business. Sorry, Councilor Fennessy.
Yeah, I just had a question on 8.2.1. It looks like on the meeting on June 25th, they approved the swim contract. Can you help me understand? Because do you know how much that contract was?
I don't know how much that contract was.
Over 25,000, right?
I don't know. Councilor Grasky, do you know the number?
The agreement is, I mean, we haven't technically spent $1, but the agreement is in our meeting to project 3 years in advance. So we did approve a 3-year contract with numbers, but that is basically approving those start of those numbers. So if it's obviously, you know that $25,000 is spent more a year on marketing from previous years.
You say those numbers. That's kind of what I'm looking for, is what those numbers are.
They are in our TDC packets that are online in our agenda center. They're
Okay,
easily available.
I guess. Okay, I guess where I'm going. This is over 25,000. I'm just wondering why that contract wasn't put before the council for approval, where it's a contract over 25,000.
So I wasn't part of that specific decision, but I did have a conversation with the attorney, and I believe Councilor Grasky might have been there. About a year after the Tourism Commission was created, we were discussing it. He found the ordinance that requires contracts to come to council for approval legally dubious, almost certainly in violation of the statute. So tourism commissions are built to be independent, and therefore the council would not have authority to review their decisions. Now, that was an old conversation, and the attorney is not here. So I think that's a question better put to him. But as far as why it's not here tonight, I didn't make that decision.
Because specifically to forget the overall ordinance that talks about contracts over 25,000. Specific to the Tourism Development Commission ordinance, it does say that anything over 25,000 needs to be approved by the council.
Yes, it does. But the attorney's opinion, again, I'm recalling an older conversation, but my memory of that conversation is that the statute would prohibit that requirement in ordinance, and the statute outranks the ordinance. So if the statute makes the Tourism Commission independent, the ordinance cannot make it subordinate to the council.
The statute doesn't require it, but our ordinance does. So what our ordinance has done is made the state statute stricter, which is allowed.
I'm just recalling my impression of the attorney's opinion. It's something you'd have to ask him for a more clear opinion.
Okay, because this doesn't have anything to do with the overpriced Charlie Barron's contract, that once that became public, the backlash from that, Mr. Barron's backed out. And this isn't an effort to try and hide our contracts and the spending with this commission. Is that correct?
It's not an effort to do anything at all. I didn't make this decision.
Okay.
May I add to that?
Sure.
If that's okay. Specifically, I mean, if there's numbers you're looking for, Councilor Fennessy, they are widely available on the agenda center. So if you have questions, you can simply ask me as well. But it is public information, so if that's what you're looking for, they're located there.
And I guess where the confusion comes from is there is no contract in the Tourism Commission agenda center like you.
Yeah, I think, councilors, you've both expressed your opinion. More to the point, nothing at all is on the agenda tonight, so I think that's about as far as we can probably stretch this conversation. I would encourage both of you to reach out to the attorney and ask these exact questions of him and get a more formal opinion. Are there any other committees that do not have recommendations but do have reports? If not, we can move to new business.
Item 10.1, I am recommending approval of an amend the premise license application for Flame Nightclub Incorporated located at 1612 Tower Avenue for the event DS Pride Block Party on August 31st and September 1st, 2024.
The motion is by Councilor Fennessy, second by Councilor Ludwig. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 10.2, I'm recommending approval of miscellaneous licenses.
Motion is by Councilor Herrick, second by Councilor Fennessy. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries.
Item 10.3, Councilor Moffitt is recommending the approval of a resolution to direct city administration draft a letter of interest in acquisition of the Wisconsin Point and South Breakwater Lighthouse.
So before we go to that, Councilor, I assume you have a presentation and that technically requires the approval of the council. Is there any objection? Ordinance holds you to 10 minutes, though, Councilor.
Thanks, everybody. I'll try and go quicker than that. So the Superior... Oh, it's up. Is it up?
It's not too late. We bought ourselves time, Councilor, so I'm not going to start his time and tell these guys.
Yeah, it's not picking up this computer. Did you do the...
I'll start reading through it, and then we can see if it comes up in a second. So I put together a lovely slideshow I'd be happy to show with you afterwards. The Superior Entry Lighthouse is currently listed for sale right now. Just some background information about the Superior Lighthouse. It was built in 1913. It was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2007, specifically noting local significance to our community's history. In 2019, it was listed for sale and purchased by a private owner. That purchase never ended up going through officially. They couldn't come to an agreement about a number of things, and the owner lives, or potential owner lives very far from here. It just didn't work out. So it's kind of ended up with 5 years of neglect and vandalism at this point. The lighthouse is currently available or will be available for a local government agency or a nonprofit to be used related to historic preservation or education. Why should the city act on this? The site was integral to the development of our modern city. When it was built in 1913, Superior was the second largest city in the state by population, right after, well, a little ways behind, Milwaukee. But we were the second biggest city. And this was kind of what led to the major development of our community and settlement was the harbor, obviously. So the site is not available to the public. There's no private owner solution here in this current process. We already recognize the importance of the structure and the harbor through our art, our logos, and our culture. Oh, excellent. Oh, you got it up on that one?
Yeah, you're in business.
Okay. I'm on the third one. Okay, there. Yeah. And we have the resources to create a partnership with other groups in our community to preserve the lighthouse over time, because the city is really one of our community's stable long-term organizations, right? And just an example there of how we recognize our lighthouse in our community on a regular basis. There's one of our lovely promotional banners that's up just over on Belknap. So next slide, please. This is the informational sign that's out at the entry. The city did a great job with this, and there's a lot of interesting information there near the lighthouse. Next slide, please. The Superior Entry Lighthouse is part of our base identity. There's the Superior City Football Club. This was recently posted on their Facebook. The lighthouse itself is part of their logo. They used it in their marketing materials. And then on the right is a lovely little watercolor painting I picked up at the Love Your Local Artist event at the library a couple years ago. They have some wonderful artists there. And a lot of our artists take inspiration from our beach in the lighthouse. And of course, musicians do the same. Next slide, please. The process for what's before us is letters of interest are due August 5th. The National Park Service will then arrange property visits with any interested parties. Interested parties can bring contractors or other inspectors or whoever they want as their kind of experts to come with them to the site. 90 days after that visit, whenever that visit occurs, applications for the property are due if you decide to apply. So next slide. What we know so far, the lighthouse has been damaged by neglect and vandalism. The lighthouse is difficult to reach by foot. You can see in the picture on the left, this is just a couple weeks ago when I was out there. There isn't really a walkway out there, and of course you can make your way on the rocks, but you have to have a degree of agility in order to do that. It requires a little bit of jumping and stuff, so it's not accessible for everybody. And of course, weather can make that more difficult. The lighthouse needs restoration work, including electrical, moisture control, and window restoration as soon as possible, although the structure itself is very thick concrete, and that concrete looks like it's in really good shape. So the core structure is doing well. It's the wood surfaces inside and the windows and things that are at risk. We know that the Fond du Lac Nation may also apply for the property, and the city could choose not to file an application competing with their application if they do, and we could issue a letter of support. They're having a meeting on Friday to discuss the property, and so they haven't been able to discuss it and take any action on it yet, but they're another potential applicant, and I'm not suggesting that we would apply to compete with them. But if they decide not to take action on it, I think it would be useful for us to have some information, either for us to act or to be able to pass that information along to other nonprofits so that they could act. So the Douglas County Historical Society is also filing a letter of interest and may be looking for potential partners if the Fond du Lac Nation chooses not to apply. And Superior's Heritage Preservation Committee held a special meeting and met last night, because they feel that there's a lot of information we don't have at this point and that the structure is really important to our community's heritage. They are recommending that we file a letter of interest so that we can get more information, tour the structure, and kind of see what potential uses it might have, what the scope of work would look like, all of those things. Next slide, please. Here's what we don't know, and it's a lot. Will another applicant apply, or will it sit being demolished by neglect? Don't know. How much work does it need? Don't know. It really depends on a use plan. If you significant upgrades, which would require water tanks and all sorts of things, but that use plan or what you're using it for really would run a wide range of uses, which could be a wide range of costs. And that's what that budget looks like. No idea at this point. What grant money is available? I don't have a clue. There's certainly some money available. I don't know what it all is. This came up, and what partners are available for management and or financing and or use, don't know all of that yet. What I want to stress today is I think the structure is super important, and I think we should submit a letter of interest because it is important and because we don't know all of these things. And I think our answer, because the structure is so important for our community, should be yes, until we know why we would be saying no. Potential reasons to say no could be the Fond du Lac Nation's applying, they have got a great plan, we want to write a letter of support for them instead. Or we looked it over and we really don't have any idea what sort of uses it might be. We don't have enough money. We don't have a management partner, all sorts of things. All of these could be figured out over the course of several months, but they can't be figured out by August 5th. And so I'm requesting tonight that we file for a letter of interest. Next slide, please. I put together a research sheet that has a bunch of information on it. This is the short URL, or there's a code on it too. It has a ton of information about the lighthouse, information about the sale, information about the National Register listing. There's links for articles for related lighthouses. There's a significant amount of links for VRBO, Airbnb options. Other places have like monetized their lighthouses, and they have a lot of people renting them that are paying a ton of money. And obviously the intent here is to maintain the structure and preserve it for the future and to provide some sort of public access. But potentially, like from what I know so far, that could be a partial use plan in which you rent it out sometimes, and then other times you make it available for the public for free tours and things. And so that could finance the restoration work that needs to get done. I don't know all the solutions here because we haven't had time to put that all together yet, but there's a lot of great information there. So that's what I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Give you a chance to return to your seat. Once Councilor Moffett returns the seat, it's his resolution, so I'll allow him to make the motion. Okay, there's a motion by Councilor Moffett to approve the resolution directing the administration to draft a letter of interest and acquisition of the Wisconsin Point South Breakwater Lighthouse. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Fennessy. Discussion. Councilor Sweeney.
I heard what you said. I think I absorbed it, but I'm asking again. Is there any, this is just to get information. There is no liability at all, short-term, long-term.
Yeah, this is just a letter of interest. So this would allow us to tour the property and ask them questions. We could take experts there to look everything over, and it gives us an extra, basically, whatever time between now and the inspection, and then an additional 90 days to decide whether or not we would want to apply, or if somebody else better is applying, or we just don't want to apply at all. But this really just allows us to get information so that we can make an informed decision, and then the application process would be down the road, and we'd have to obviously talk about that again.
Sure. My main concern at this early stage is long-term liability for the property.
So the Army Corps of Engineers retains the concrete structure underneath, and so if you're concerned about people like jumping off and swimming or whatever, or any sorts of things with the structure underneath, that would be the liability of the Army Corps of Engineer. Potentially anything that would happen inside the lighthouse, if we owned it, could be on city liability, just in the way that something could happen to somebody like on the staircase here or wherever, where we have city property. So,
Councilor Johnson.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councilor Sweeney, did you have more? Councilor Johnson, then, please.
I feel like I should know the answer to this question, but I couldn't place it in my mind. Has the city ever owned that? Or when was the last time ever? Never?
It's always been federal agencies.
Okay. I guess my concerns lie with Councilor Sweeney's, including the accessibility part, because we could be taking on a huge... It would be hard to rent it out, and I think the current owner found that as well, for any of your ideas there, and they're good ideas, and I know that they've been replicated in other places, but I doubt they have quite the Ninja Warrior accessibility that this one has. So I guess I'm kind of concerned about that. And then the cost, too. I just don't know. With an unknown there, I think those are some things down the line that we need to address. But it's an interesting idea to have it and preserve it. But I guess my other question would be, if not us or anyone else, then what happens to it? Do you know the answer to that? If there's zero interest?
I don't know the answer to that. I'll ask you to hold on just a minute, Councilor Moff. We have some other lights on. I don't know the answer to that. My assumption is my review of the documents, because the Army Corps has to retain the usage of it. They're using certain elements, so I assume they just keep it, but I don't know the answer to that. Councilor Herrick.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I remember years ago when I was on the council before that, this particular lighthouse came up for sale. The city at that time had an opportunity to get it, and they never did, and then so it went to a private sale. And from what I understand from the private sale, it was going to cost too much to go ahead and refurbish it so that it can be, capable for somebody to live in or even visit there for the gentleman that was interested in it, he wanted to use it for to get away and come up here in the summertime. With that being said, it's a great landmark. It is one that it does represent the community. However, if you look at the costs of, if you showed us that pile of rocks, and I've been there many times, is that to get that so it's functional for people to go out there and actually visit it is going to be an enormous cost. As far as electricity, we don't know because a lot of electricity does lie underneath all those rocks. So we're looking at two great expenses there. Again, liability issues, for that, we're responsible and liable for anybody who gets hurt out there. And what about security? How are we going to secure that place as far as the windows being broken? Again, these are some of the questions that I have. But on the brighter side, I'm glad if we don't, somebody else and different entities are interested in it. I know we got a lot of projects now that we're working on. We've still got Carnegie. We still got the Princess Museum. So we do have a lot of these other things that we should take care of, I think, first. I don't think it'll go anywhere unless the federal government decides to tear it down. It's not like somebody can buy it and move it. It's permanently there. Again, those are just some of my concerns. So thank you.
Councilor Moffitt?
Okay, so just to answer a few things, access is challenging, and there are other lighthouses that are accessible only by water and are placed higher up because they're farther out that are rented. And so I would say that this is the lighthouse that we're familiar with, and it is challenging to get to. There are lighthouses that are rented out on a regular basis that have demand for them that are harder to get to, and they're able to find ways to get access to them with boats and things. We could have a partner that from the marina potentially that would shuttle visitors or something. We don't know any of these things yet because we haven't had a chance to research that. Cost, yeah, it depends on, the cost is going to depend on what you want to use it for, right? And so if you want it to be luxury accommodations, it's going to need a lot of upgrades. There are challenges. That breaker wall going out there is the Army Corps of Engineer, and so it's unlikely, I would think, that they would allow you to build a walkway on it, but I don't know that at this point. And so you're looking at probably some sort of boat access to potentially get to it. I don't know if it would ever be ADA compliant as a historic resource or anything like that. Plus, when you're inside, the staircases and things certainly are not. And so that's just kind of the nature of a historic property in some ways. There are ways to make that accessible to the public through virtual tours and other things, so you can make it as accessible as possible. I would say that our other historic resources in the city, the Meteor and Farallon, are only somewhat accessible also. So it would probably go up for private sale if a government or nonprofit partner doesn't get it. And if it goes to a private sale, I think that it's unlikely that it would come back available for the city again at some point. Or if it did, to get public access could be more expensive. I would say windows, they're obviously glass, but you could keep the original wood frames and replace the broken glass panes with like plexiglass or like a storm-resistant material that's plastic nowadays, and so like that would help deter any damage or things like that. There's a lot of just like super unknowns here, and I know that, but this process tonight is about us getting more information so that we don't have all of those unknowns before we make a decision.
Councilor Grasky.
Do you have an example of other successful lighthouses that you know of then that have been in this situation and that have somehow put investment in infrastructure-wise? I mean, if we're talking about people touring this, I mean, is there facilities? I mean, that's a long walk, so I don't think, I know this is different than, these probably could be answered after this letter, but just an example of a lighthouse that you find to be successful.
Split Rock. And then
okay, besides Split Rock.
that one's local, but besides that, there's a number. If you go through the links, I can share those, or Heidi can send those out. There's a number of listings both on VRBO, Airbnb, and internationally in which people rent out lighthouse experiences. People generally wouldn't want to live in that sort of a remote location where most of these are located, so a lot of them, in order to be preserved, are turned into destination like vacation dwellings or whatever, and some of them are listed as like rustic kind of campsites where you're maybe using an outhouse or something like that, and it's very minimal, and you're essentially camping but in a building, or some of them are very fancy, and so I think there's a wide range of success stories, and there's high demand for those in top dollars, but depending on what you want to use it for and the more money you want to get out of it, you would potentially put more money in. And so but again, that could be private fundraising or another partner, or we would potentially have a like there are vacation rental management companies in our region, and so one of them would potentially help manage the facility, so the city wouldn't have to deal with it, and then the city would have it reserved for certain dates for public access or whatever. And so, yeah, a lot of unknowns, but there are a lot of lighthouses listed in the document they sent out.
So this letter, you just would like us as a council to support this in order to get these answers that are kind of we're all asking.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Split Rock, since we're just talking about it, is that owned by? Do you know who that's owned by then, or is that like a nonprofit? Is it county museum? What?
It's the Minnesota Historical Society, as far as I know.
Okay.
So they operate it under these guidelines that it's used for educational and, historical purposes.
Okay.
Councilor Fennessy.
I think there's just so many unknowns here, but at the same time, this is such a cool piece of our history, and it has just an incredible amount of potential. And maybe that's a pipe dream, but I think this is such a cool idea. Even if nothing comes to it with this, but really all we're doing, like Garney, you nailed it. All we're doing right now is just saying, hey, let's just a letter of intent. We can we can take the exit door at any time along the way, but all this does is kind of keep us in the loop, so we can get at least maybe narrow down some of those unanswered questions and get some answers on those.
Councilor Van
Thank you, Chair. I will say that something that I've really come to appreciate is the level of tenacity that I've seen this work around the lighthouse materialize. I really admire that, and just wanted to thank you for your work with DCHS and the Heritage Preservation Committee. I think there are a lot of thoughts and concerns that I share with folks here, and you do a good job addressing some of those concerns with just an extraordinary amount of positivity, and I just really appreciate that. I will just add, though, that this information was released, I think, 4 weeks ago today, and I know that the timeline is out of your control, and I think what makes me uncomfortable about supporting it, though, is that, beyond Fond du Lac, is that the Wisconsin Point Committee hasn't had a chance to discuss this, and that's the DNR, that's the county, that's UWS, that's a citizen rep who used to represent that area, and then of course Parks and Wisconsin Point is a subcommittee of Parks. So I just can't support it just because that committee hasn't had a chance to discuss it, and I think that's too important. But no judgment, not criticizing the effort at all. I feel uncomfortable without having talked to those folks. Thank you.
Councilor Herrick again, please.
Yeah, just one quick comment. What's nice about Split Rock, it has road access, so that's really nice. So, yeah. Again, this letter of intent, do you know if the other entities that are interested, like the Fond du Lac and that, are they going to be sending this letter in at the same time, or if this letter is sent in, does that knock out everybody else?
The letter, it's a letter of interest to just get more information. So I don't know the timing, but they're all due August 5th. So I guess potentially everyone would wait and send it in on the 4th or the 5th or something. I would assume some of them will go in sooner rather than later. And then just to comment, I thought about the Wisconsin Point Committee, and I'd love to get this in front of them. And if we don't approve the letter of interest, we can't, because we only have until August 5th. But if we send in a letter of interest, we can ask for their opinion about this before we would send in an application. So they would be able to provide input on use plan, on partnerships, on everything before we would send in an application. But if we don't vote for this tonight, then they won't get the opportunity to do that.
Further discussion? Councilors, just a couple procedural points from me. First, this is minor, but I have to point out that council can't direct the administration to do things like this. It would usually be a recommendation, but if this adopts, I will be happy to write a letter on your behalf. If things like this come up, feel free to always approach me. A letter of interest is very similar to a letter of intent, and my office is very capable of writing those things. That doesn't necessarily require council approval because, as Councilor Moffitt mentions, it doesn't actually bind us to anything. At the risk of revealing my own bias, I have been something of a crank on the lighthouse for many years, having considered it both the city and the county board. I generally not been interested in pursuing this project. I don't see it as in danger. I do, however, recognize its very significant historic symbolism and value to the community. I will be attending a meeting of the Reservation Business Council for the Fond du Lac Band on Friday, wherein their Tribal Historic Preservation Office will present a similar proposal to send a letter of interest. If the RBC supports the acquisition of the lighthouse, I will be very strongly against the city of Superior pursuing it in any way. I will, however, pursue us acting in support, not in partnership, in support of their application. That means allowing them to take the lead, offering help in whatever way they request. I do believe, especially with its place in history, as well as its relationship in actual geography to other land owned and managed by Fond du Lac, that they would be far better stewards. And quite frankly, they manage historic properties and we don't. We actually contract ours out, and so they're fairly good at it. I don't know what their opinion is on it any more than I know what yours is. I'm kind of curious to see how this vote shakes out, and I'm hoping you don't put it to a tie. So that's my position, as much as it is no position at all. If you pass it, I'll write the letter. If you don't, I may still write a letter. I would want to know what Fond du Lac has to say first. Councilor Grasky?
Is that something that we can agree on first in order to, just by, if this is, how do I say this? Right now, yes, if no one else was going to apply, but we do know of someone else that is applying, are we able to somehow tie that into tonight's decision, where if there is a decision made on Friday that we don't go any further? I don't know how to explain that any better than we can. I don't know how to change that or make an amendment or anything like that. I just trying to understand how we can still be a part of the process positively, but I don't want to see this council split on something and then possibly lose on an opportunity if something doesn't come through. Maybe we're the only people that do apply or show a letter of interest. Excuse me.
Yeah, there's the Heritage Preservation Committee last night, that their motion was actually something similar. I forget the exact wording, but it was to the tune of that they would support a letter of interest, but would also support supporting Fond du Lac's letter of interest. So an amendment imposing a condition that the letter of interest will be sent in the event that Fond du Lac does not send one. Yes, you can make that amendment. I conditional resolutions all the time, but so I mean, if that's your interest, we can write that amendment.
I would push that for that to be amended.
Simply adding in the let me just look at the resolution really quickly. Or be it resolved, Common Council is requesting, I would just add to the very end of the be it resolved, this resolution shall be conditional on the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Ojibwe declining to issue a letter of interest. How's that sound?
Sure.
Do you have that?
Declining to submit.
Yeah, a letter of interest. Is there a second to the motion to amend? Second. Seconds by Councillor Elm. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Moffett.
I would ask people to vote against the amendment because they may submit a letter of interest and then get the information and decide not to apply, in which case we would not have the information we need to put together an alternative management partnership or plan or be able to do any of the work that we need to do, because we wouldn't have the information because they applied to get the information and we didn't. So as much as I don't want to put in an application that competes with their application, I would like us to make sure that we get the information so that we can make a decision on it if they decide not to.
Further discussion on the motion to amend. Councillor Fennis.
I think the other thing to point out is that amendment is already baked into the process. If we submit a letter of, what is it, a letter of interest, and Fond du Lac does the same thing, and we agree that their proposal is just as good or better than how we would treat that lighthouse, we can back out at any time. This isn't like a home offer where we have to make this contingent upon something. That exit strategy is already baked into the process, where this letter of interest doesn't bind us to anything other than, really all this letter of interest does is bind them from keeping us in the fold so we can get some of those questions answered.
Further discussion. Councillor Van Sickle.
Thank you. One question. So if DCHS submits a letter of interest and those members receive that same information, is that something that could be shared with the city? Or is that, or if you don't submit a letter of interest, does that then preclude you altogether from the process? Or I don't know. Do you know that?
Mr. Moffett.
I'm not positive because I'm not an expert I've never applied for a lighthouse before. But my understanding is that this is the first step in the application process, is to get the information, be able to tour the site and meet with their experts. And so I'm not sure if you can apply or not if you don't go through this process.
Thank you. And I think I'll just address that. If we don't approve the letter of interest, then the Wisconsin Point Committee can't hear it. I think, I can't speak for that committee, but, there might have been an opportunity in the last 4 weeks. I don't know if we could have collected them, but summer's difficult as it is, and I think the time frame was pretty short on their behalf. But yeah, it's a tough call because normally they would have discussed it and maybe brought up pros and cons that we haven't been able to really flesh out yet. So yeah, thank you.
Councilor Sweeney.
I would feel far more comfortable, even with a letter of intent, to having our city attorney look at it to make sure there's no, I know you say it's a letter of intent, and that seems to be there'd be no liability on the city's part, no responsibility. But I would feel more comfortable if we do vote in the positive, that have our frog look at that.
The question in front of us right now, councillors, is whether to amend. One point I have to bring up, one of my concerns when I go both to the RBC and leaving this meeting tonight. I think everybody has a clear understanding of what a letter of interest actually does. I'm nervous about leaving here with the very simple statement, City of Superior has an interest in acquiring the lighthouse, because I don't know that almost any of you are saying that. And so that would not be a true statement, and I would be nervous about pushing the RBC in a way to say, like, well, if the city's going to do it, then maybe we don't have to. And because I think the city's pretty unlikely to pursue a project here. And so I'd much rather be pushing them the other way. Hey, if you are interested in this, we would really support it. But I can't compel you to do that either. I may have some other options depending on how you want, if you're looking for any other ways to look at this. But why don't we address the amendment first? That's where we're at. That question is whether to make the issuing of a letter of interest contingent on Fond du Lac declining, essentially. Any further questions or discussion on that amendment? Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The motion fails. We are back on the main motion, whether to submit a letter of interest. The only other thing if we were to buy for time, I'm very reluctant to hold a special council meeting between now and July. We could conceivably accelerate our committee of the whole to take on the budget. I would love to do that, but I'd be imposing on all of your schedules on a Tuesday or Thursday in July when you hadn't planned on coming here on a beautiful night. But you could also refer to a special meeting of the Wisconsin Point Committee, which you could set. No guarantee that they're going to show up and form a quorum, and then you are leaving the decision to them, which we can send a letter on their behalf every bit as much as we can send it on yours. So those are options that remain. Alternatively, you can pass it here tonight or not, and we'll just deal with whatever option you choose. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll try a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the resolution, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. Is there any further business? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, councilors.